My name is Ashes-Fauzah Beltz, and I'm the author of Rising from the Dust and a consultant. I was born in a small part of Kwale in Tiribe. I think Kwale is a county at the moment. I grew up in different homes. First I was with my mom, and then she gave me away to my maternal grandmother when I was the age of 3. And the reason why she did that is because my parents were never married, and so as far as I can remember, and what I was told later on was that my mom took me in, and then later she gave me away to her mom so that she can continue with her life. And so I stayed with my maternal grandmother until I was about the age of 7. That's when I was taken in to stay with my paternal grandmother. Growing up, I was an introvert person. I wasn't speaking a lot, and I think it's because of the way I was raised, my upbringing. There was always feelings of inadequate because my parents were not there, and for me, there was always something like amiss, and so I didn't have actually a lot of friends, but I grew up in an environment where we had cousins, and everyone was there. So I didn't have friends, but there were so many other kids I could play with. But then later on, when before I started my high school, then I met my only and one best friend, Bernice, and we are still friends to date. To this moment, we are doing this interview. I wanted to be different because growing up, sometimes I always say that words have a lot of power. And for me, when we adults, we parents, we guardians, tell our children, tell the kids we are raising that, you will amount to nothing. We really don't know what we are doing, but those words give a lot of power to that person. And for me, growing up, there were moments, I was born out of wedlock, and so for me, there were a lot of times where I was told that I will amount to nothing, and for me, I didn't want to be nothing, because I really believe that God's creation for me was bigger than anything else, and I really believe that each one of us, everyone has a purpose in this life. So for me, that has been something that keeps me going. It keeps me moving, because I understand that of all the things that had to happen for me to be here on earth, it's a blessing. And so I know for sure for myself that He who created me is bigger than anything else, and I don't do anything on my own without this power, this energy that that is bigger than any problem, than than the words people say to other people, than even our parents, our guardians, our friends, than anybody else, including our culture. So I believe that this power is far much bigger than anything else, and I don't do anything without that understanding. That's what keeps me going. When I look at what's happening now, you cannot speak up. Our culture doesn't allow us to say things, and the society sometimes doesn't allow us to to say things. And for me, growing up back then, we were just supposed to be there, but not to be heard. Yeah, of course we are being seen, but we are not supposed to be heard. And for me, I really believe that each one of us has an internal power, and we cannot suppress that energy that is within in each one of us. It's very powerful. And so for me, because I was not allowed to say anything, there are certain orders, there are certain rules that we have to follow. And so for me, I find my way of relieving my emotion. I grew up a lot in fear, and I had a lot of anxiety. Later on, I went through a period of depression, and we are not allowed to talk about these things. And so for me, writing gives me a way of relieving myself and my emotion, and that's my happy place to be. As a child, you don't know why things are happening the way they are. You know, we always want, I'm human, yeah, and we all want things in a different way. And sometimes when things don't go the way we had expected, it does something to someone. And so for me, until today, I really believe that the beginning of my life has actually shaped me to be this woman that I am at the moment. I was in Tiribe. I don't even know if you've been there or even if you've heard about it. It's a very small town, but I would want to think now things are changing, you know. The country is growing, things are changing. And my memories were, I can only remember walking, you know, from home to school. I think it was about half an hour to 2 hours, you know. And well, academically I was struggling. So for me, that was very hard. It was actually a challenge because, you know, my parents were not there. You know, I was with my grandmother, and I always felt like maybe there is always something that didn't feel okay. There was always something that made me feel like I am less than, you know. And academically, I was struggling, and until today, I don't know if it's because of, you know, the way you know, sometimes when you grow up in certain environment, if you are not encouraged and being empowered, you don't know better. And if you don't know better, you don't do better, because you only do what you are told. And for me, I really believe my struggles also had a lot of impact in my school. And it was hard because, you know, there's some things you don't feel comfortable talking about them. So it wasn't easy. And so I finished my primary school, and the results were really bad. That was a big disappointment to my dad. He was really disappointed because I'm the eldest, and, you know, being the eldest child, there are always expectations. You are supposed to set the standards for the other kids who are, you know, looking up to you. And for me, I think as a parent now, I really believe that we shouldn't compare our children, because every child is well equipped differently, and God has blessed us differently. So when we compare our children, we make the other child who is not smart enough to feel inadequate. So anyway, in the end, I ended up in Machakos, Kani Lions School. It was a mixed boarding, and yeah, I was there until I finished my high school, and then I had a D, and I was like, okay, where am I going to do, and where am I going with this, and what am I going to do with this? And that was a big downfall for my family. Failure was not expected. Going to college was also something that it was, yeah, because with a D, what do you do? And so at that moment, I was sent back to Tiribe to stay with my grandmother, as I was waiting for means or ways, you know, to get to college. And so I found that was really discouraging because, you know, going back to Tiribe, you know, being in a boarding school, I had already changed as a person, and then, you know, I'm going back there where things are still the same. And so for me, that was really hard. But, you know, you cannot tell anyone how you feel, because nobody asks you, actually, because you just have to follow what you're being told to do. And so later on, after a lot of, you know, conversations, and, you know, I managed to go to college. I went to Buruburu, but then I had no place to stay, you know. So then in the end, I got a place to stay in Umoja with a distant cousin. And I used to walk from Umoja to Unit College in Buruburu, crossing past Mtindwa. you can just imagine when it's flooded and when it's raining. But I did it because I knew I had a second chance for my life. I will always be grateful, to be honest, because I think for me, it wasn't about the D or being academically struggling, you know. My life started because when I entered college, we had a very good teacher. My lecturer was an amazing man, and I really hope that he still empowers, you know, other people, because what he was telling us was it's not about what you are going to get after unit college, but what are you going to do, because life out there is different. You may have everything, but the real life out there, it's about what are you choosing to do and the choices that we will make after that, because that is what will change you as a person. And so for me, I felt like I had been given a second chance for my life, and I finished my college, and actually my lecturer, he helped me to get an internship with Seasons Restaurant. But when I went for the internship, they needed a waitress. So they took me in and they gave me a job. I was like, hallelujah. I was very grateful. I always believed that God was directing my destiny. And I took that job wholeheartedly because I knew that I could have bread and butter for Fauzah. And that changed my life. The Panari Hotel built me as a person. Season Hotel was a stepping stone, but then Panari, a whole world changed. I mean, hello, it's a 5-star hotel. You meet a lot of different people. You meet different guests. You meet people, my colleagues, and I felt like I belonged there. And Panari Hotel gave me a different mindset about myself because I realized that I could actually grow. So when I started at Panari, I went in as a hostess. And for me, that was a big deal. Like, I was just supposed to look cute and smile and, you know, and welcome the guests. Like, how cute is that? Like, it was a dream come true because when I went in for the interview, I had asked for a waitress. But then again, I think really it's by the grace of God and God's favor. They wanted a hostess and they gave me the position. So when I started my life with Panari, I went back to college. I went back to college because at that moment I only had a certificate, and I was happy with what I was doing, but I wanted to develop myself to be a better person, not for anyone, but for Fauzah, because, you know, we are the only ones who can make the change we want to see in our life, in our country, in everywhere, in everything that we do. And sometimes I think the reason why sometimes we don't move forward, it's because we create excuses, or we live life with a lot of pitfalls. But I think if we make decisions for ourselves, and if we become intentional of who we want to be versus who we are, we can do amazing things. And I had a job. You can imagine we work in shifts. It's hostel business. You all know how it is. But I still managed to go back to college, and I took a diploma in public relations. I never got any opportunity to use that diploma, but the knowledge and the wisdom that I had, we always say knowledge is power. Until today, it's still with me. And then after this, I met my lovely husband, and then we moved from Kenya to Dubai. So a whole new world for Fauzah began. My life was a stepping stone from one glory to the other. And for me, I also want to talk a little bit about my relationship with my husband, because my relationship with my husband brought a lot of shame to my family. All of a sudden, I was labeled, you know, and I became an outcast because according to my culture, it was a taboo, you know, to go out with a man that is not of the same ethnicity as myself. And that was painful for me. I didn't realize that sometimes we humans can see our differences and create a lot of issues for each other. And so for me, what I know now, which I didn't know then, is that in this life, sometimes you need to do what will also work for you. Our parents, our guardians, our family, our culture, our society has a lot of expectations. You know, and for myself, I was expected to be this girl who doesn't do any mistakes. But you know, I'm a human being. And so for me to get rejection from my family because of the relationship of, you know, my husband now, the father of my son, was very painful. I was labeled, I was called a prostitute. Yeah. It was hard. It was emotional, and I really hope that you, who are the parents, whoever, guardians, whoever is watching this now, I really hope that there are better ways of dealing with things. And it's also important that we realize that we human beings, each one of us, can also have choices in life. And whatever we do, there are also ways to deal with situations. And it's also important that we understand other people's feelings. Because if we walk around breaking other people, it brings a lot of trauma. And we don't realize that. And for me, that was really hard. I went through depression again. I felt like there were days where I didn't want to wake up. I mean, I used to ask myself, what's my story? What am I going to tell my friend, you know, my colleagues? You know, who am I? I lost my own identity in my own family. That was really hard. But then I realized that we all have power. And sometimes it doesn't matter what has happened to you. What I know now that I didn't know is, what are you doing? The hardest part is when you reach out, but still you are, you know, it's like you're being pushed out, you know, you don't belong. I think sometimes you just have to accept that this is my destiny. And what can I do now with what's happening? And so for me, moving there from, you know, from accepting myself, you know, battling my anxiety, battling my depression, battling my fear, I ended up having a coach. But then at that moment, you know, our life, you know, changed, and my husband got, you know, we moved from Kenya and, you know, we went to Dubai. And I want really to say this from my heart, that don't, whatever situation you are, even the rejections from family, I mean, seriously, there are people committing suicides. And this is because of so many things, some family rivals, you know, some abuse, you know, relationships, marriage issues. There's so much going on that when I think about it now as we are doing these interviews, it really breaks my heart. And there are so many ways that we can deal with things without hurting one another. So for myself, I was lucky enough that my husband, you know, now the father of my son, he held my hand, and he said, it is okay. And sometimes, you know, we want answers for things that happen to us. But what I know now, that it is okay not to be okay. And sometimes we will not have answers for everything that we go through. But for me, how I dealt with my situation was, I ended up having a coach. And for me, that was a big thing, because really, it really helped me to find my own identity and my voice. Who am I? And I had that, you know, I was able to articulate, you know, the reasons of my birth and the reasons why I'm here on earth. Because it's not about the rejection, it's not about how my life started. You know, I realized there was a bigger picture. And it was me now, you know, to step forward to find those answers for myself. Because sometimes we look around looking for answers from people, but no, we need to sit down and ponder these questions and ask ourselves, what can I now do? And for me, realizing that I have still the power gave me a lot of courage, and that's when I started writing. So my writing career began because it was a way for me to relieve myself. It was a rebirth, you know, a rebirth of who am I? You know, it's about asking that big question, and what is it that I want to do with myself? And a new life in Dubai, really, it opened up a whole world. You know, living in Dubai has really developed me as a person as well. And I realized that sometimes, you know, traveling and seeing other cultures, you quite learn a lot. And then you suddenly realize that there is a book in every person. And for me, having that understanding also and sharing my story with other people, it also gave me the courage, you know, to continue and write, you know, and writing Rising from the Dust. And Rising from the Dust, for me, it's a dedication to everybody who they don't know, they have lost themselves, you know, in any situation, in the culture, in the family, you know, they don't know who they are. They still don't, they haven't found their own power. You know, I wanted to encourage other people that you have the power, that authentic power, that it is inside you. It is in each and every one of us. That power that cannot be taken away by anybody, by not where you come from, by any labels you've been labeled. But that power that is within you, no one can take that out. And so for me, having that understanding, I realized for myself, how can I use this power to serve the purpose of my soul? Because when I articulate the reason of my birth and why I'm here, asking that big question, yeah, there is nothing that you cannot do. When you understand who you are and in whose you are, you can do everything, because it's not all about you, but there is this big power. For me, I call that God. And I don't do anything without that realization that there is a higher power that is bigger than my problems, than anything that we go through in life, because it's not all about us. Sometimes it's about for His glory. When you realize that you have this authentic power, you know, what can I do to serve the purpose of my soul? Because, you know, we always ask ourselves, you know, everybody tends to question, why am I here on earth? And, you know, our purpose here on earth is getting into the business of knowing who we are and getting in the business of doing that. And so for me, I love learning. So I went back to college because I always believe that education is power and nobody can take that out from you. So I went back to college and I did interior design, and I did also some courses in fashion. And yeah, I love being creative. So for me, anything that will give me, you know, a lot of knowledge, a lot of power, anything creative, anything new, I love to do that. And I went back to college and I pursued my diploma in interior design, and I also went, you know, I did small courses in fashion. And at the moment, I'm just loving everything about Fauzah, because she has found her own identity. And when you know who you are and in whose you are, you become who you've been created to be. With all my work, with all my writing, because I just didn't want to, you know, to be, because for at the moment, I really believe to whom much is given, much is also expected. And I'm very, very grateful that I have had so many people who have walked with me through my journey. And I just didn't want to, you know, just to be. I wanted to be. not only to be, but to being. And so because of this, I created a platform called Fauzah Consultancy. So Fauzah Consultancy is a platform where I deal with mentoring, consulting. You know, I help other people who want to share their story. I can walk through with you to share your journey, because I believe there is a story and there is a book in everyone. And so having that understanding that each and every person has a unique talent, I wanted to have an umbrella, something that I can help other people to find their own journey. My takeaway for anyone who is watching today will be, don't lose your own power. It doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't matter where your journey has begun. It really doesn't matter what the society has said. Even our own families. You know, sometimes families, actually, they're the ones who really can cause people to go into depression. They can really make people to go into, you know, into suicidal modes, you know. And because we cannot talk about these things. And for me, I really take it so personal, because there's so many people hurting. You know, the other day I was watching, you know, girls committing suicide. If only we parents, we guardians, we can listen to our children, to those people who we are, you know, we are nurturing. It's because what I know now, it's not about what we give them. We can give them best education. We can give them the best toys. We can give them everything. But what I know, if there is no love, there is always something missing inside. And so for me, for anyone who is watching today, I want to encourage you by saying, don't lose yourself. You need to find yourself from within, because what I know for sure is each and every person has their own power. That authentic power that I've spoken about earlier on, that is within each person, that power that cannot be taken away by anybody, not even by our own parents. That power is greater and it is enough for you. Don't lose it.